Good evening and welcome. This is Spotlight Africa, bringing you stories all around the continent. Of course, we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. And Spotlight Africa is brought to you by Spectrum Television and Planet Radio. My name is Uyai Anekan. Today on Spotlight Africa, Zimbabwe court reinstate opposition candidates. We also see Tunisia's president sack Prime Minister Biden. Jacob Zuma back home after Russian medical trip. U.S. announcing partial evacuation of embassy. Plus, Moroccan jailed for criticizing King on Facebook. These are all the stories just ahead on Spotlight Africa. Do stay with us. Thanks for joining us first in Spotlight Africa. Zimbabwe's Supreme Court has cleared 12 candidates from the opposition Citizens Coalition for Change to contest in this month's general election, quashing a High Court ruling that they had registered after the Court of Time. 4 candidates from small opposition parties were also reinstated on the ballot, following the unanimous decision from the judges, but the reasoning behind the ruling has not yet been published. Reports say the pre-election period has seen numerous court cases after the chaotic registration day on the 21st of June. Now, candidates were registering late into the night past the prescribed 4 p.m. deadline. Dozens of candidates failed to register over payment and other logistical challenges. Meanwhile, the general election is due on the 23rd of August. Moving away from that, Cote d'Ivoire's nationalist former president Henry Konan Bedi, who had not excluded the possibility of a return to power even in his latter days, has died at the age of 89. According to reports, a crowd had begun to gather outside his residence in the capital. A career politician born in 1934 to a family of cocoa planters, Bedi was the chosen successor to Cote d'Ivoire's founding father Felix Hippolyte-Boigny, who ruled over the West African nation from independence from France in 1960 until his death in 1993 at the age of 88. Bedi served as president from 1993 until 1999, when he was overthrown by the military in the country's first ever coup. In another development, Rwandan President Paul Kagame has appointed his daughter a key position in his office. Ange Kagame, 29, has been made the Deputy Executive Director in charge of the Strategy and Policy Council, according to a statement of a cabinet meeting chaired by Kagame. The statement also announced other appointments, including new ambassadors to Ethiopia, Morocco, Egypt, and Guinea. Kagame has been working in the president's office as a senior policy analyst since 2019 and holds political science and international affairs degrees from U.S. universities. 2 of President Kagame's other children also hold positions in the government. It will be recalled that his eldest son, Ivan Kagame, was appointed in 2020 to the Rwandan Development Board, which is tasked with fast-tracking economic growth through the private sector. The third-born son, Ian, is an officer of the Rwandan Defense Force and was last year enrolled into the Presidential Guard. Elsewhere, Tunisia's autocratic president Kais Saied has sacked Prime Minister Njala Bowden. Bowden, the country's first female prime minister, was handpicked by President Saied to lead the government after he removed her predecessor 2 years ago and took control of state powers. Reports say her dismissal was followed by the immediate swearing-in of Ahmed Achani, who previously worked at the Tunisian Central Bank. Moving now to South Africa, where former President Jacob Zuma has returned from Russia, where he has been receiving medical treatment. His trip came after he lost a case last month at the Constitutional Court, where he had tried to overturn a ruling that he must return to prison. It will be recalled that the Constitutional Court ruled that Zuma had been granted medical parole unlawfully. Meanwhile, the prisons department has now given the 81-year-old until Friday to submit reasons why he should not serve out the rest of his 15-month sentence. Zuma was released in September of 2021 after serving less than 8 weeks. On the development on the coup in Niger, West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS Community of West African States has said it sent a delegation to Niger to negotiate with the coup leaders who seized power last week, adding that a military intervention in the junta-led country was the last option on the table. The diplomatic push comes as French and other European aircraft continue to evacuate hundreds of foreign nationals from Niger's capital, Niamey. Nigeria, the current chair of ECOWAS and West Africa's military and economic superpower, has vowed to take a firm line against coups that have proliferated across the region since 2020. Most of them the outcome of a bloody jihadist insurgency. The regional bloc on Sunday imposed trade and financial sanctions and gave the coup leaders a week to reinstate Niger's democratically elected president or face potential use of force. In a related developments, there are rolling blackouts in Niger's capital, Niamey, as well as the other major cities of Maradi and Zinda. Now, according to reports, people have power supplies for about an hour at a time, and then the power goes off for 4 or 5 hours. The Niger Electricity Company in Gileg says this is a result of Nigeria cutting supplies as part of sanctions imposed by the West African bloc ECOWAS over the coup. Nigeria is the major supplier of electricity to Niger. Its transmission company of Nigeria has declined to comment. Meanwhile, people have started gathering at a square in central Niamey, the capital of Niger, to show their support for last week's military coup. On the anniversary of the country's independence, a coalition of civil society organizations called for people to turn up to denounce sanctions imposed by the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS. ECOWAS has strongly condemned the coup and has introduced restrictions on trade. It says it could use force if President Mohamed Bazoum is not reinstated. Meanwhile, the French Foreign Ministry called on the leaders of last week's coup to guarantee the safety of its embassy ahead of the protest. In the meantime, Nigeria's army has said it has not received an order to commence military action against the military junta in Niger. In a statement reacting to a report that Nigerian soldiers were mobilizing in preparation, a spokesperson said that the armed forces could not begin a mission on behalf of the regional group ECOWAS without the mandate from the heads of state. Brigadier General Tukur Gusau said the military option was the last option to be taken in case every other option fails to reverse the situation in Niger. Elsewhere, the leader of last week's military coup, still in Niger, has condemned sanctions imposed on the country by the West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS as illegal, unjust and inhumane. General Abdurrahman Tichani insisted his government would not give in to the regional or international pressure to reinstate Niger's elected president. Mohamed Bazoum, in a televised speech, General Tichani also insisted French nationals had nothing to fear. Meanwhile, Paris has confirmed it has evacuated nearly 1,000 people, including 560 French citizens, after its embassy in Niamey came under attack from demonstrators on Sunday. The U.S. State Department late on Wednesday announced a partial evacuation of its embassy in Niger with non-essential staff and their families urged to leave. An ECOWAS delegation led by Nigeria's former military head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, is in Niamey, Niger's capital, to mediate with the coup leaders. Still on the coup, the United States has ordered the partial evacuation of its embassy in Niger following last week's coup. Hundreds of foreign nationals have already been evacuated from the country, and on Sunday the French embassy was attacked by protesters. Meanwhile, coup leader General Abdurrahman Tijani has warned against any interference in the internal affairs of the country. Protests in support of the coup are expected to take place on Thursday to mark Niger's Independence Day. That is despite an official ban on demonstrations. France, the former colonial power in Niger, has asked the military junta, which has taken control of the country, to guarantee the security of their embassy. It will be recalled that crowds attacked the French diplomatic mission on Sunday, prompting the country to organize evacuation flights. In a related development, the first group of British nationals have safely left Niger on a French flight to Paris. The Foreign Office has said it gave no further details on how many Britons were on the plane, but said a very small number remain in Niger. Violence has broken out in the West African country following last week's military coup. Reports say France and Italy had already started evacuating their citizens. The UK government had previously advised British nationals to register their whereabouts and stay indoors. There were believed to be fewer than 100 British nationals in Niger. The first to be evacuated were those who had requested to leave Niger and were able to make their way to the airport in time for this flight. A statement from the Foreign Office said the UK's ambassador and a core team remain in Niger to support the very small number of British nationals who are still there. Moving away from that, fighting has flared up in multiple areas of Ethiopia's Amhara region between the army and local militias. Reports say since April, the security situation in Amhara has been deteriorating following the decision to disband the region's state-backed paramilitary group. Militias that feel Amhara has been left exposed to attacks from other regions. Nigeria unions suspend strike over cost of living. Stay tuned for details of this. Thanks for staying tuned. This is still Spotlight Africa. Of course, we're bringing you news stories all over the continent. The northern region of Ethiopia has been hit with an earthquake of magnitude 5.6. The neighboring said all districts near the border with Eritrea felt the tremors. In the meantime, the Ethiopian Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeke Mekonnen has expressed concern over the worrying security situation in the Amhara region. Since April, the security situation in Amhara has been deteriorating following the decision to disband the region's state-backed paramilitary group. The military has been engaged in an offensive against armed groups in the region. In another development, Senegal has suspended TikTok, saying the video sharing platform had been used to fan violence sparked by the detention of opposition figure Ousmane Sonko. Authorities had already cut mobile data access on Monday, with several human rights groups denouncing the measure, as well as the dissolution of Sonko's party. Unrest erupted after Sonko was charged on Monday with fomenting insurrection, undermining state security, criminal association with a terrorist body, and other crimes. Now, according to reports, at least 3 people have died in the unrest, while 2 others were killed on Tuesday in a petrol bomb attack on a bus in the outskirts of the capital, Dakar. Let's tell a story in Nigeria, where the leaders of Nigeria's main trade union federations have suspended a nationwide strike over the rising cost of living and agreed to further talks with the government. President Bola Tinubu's removal of the subsidy on the petrol price is at the heart of the issue. The unions had given the government until Wednesday to reverse the decision on the subsidy removal. As the authorities refused to budge, the unions called their members out and organized marches in cities across the country on Wednesday. But a statement from the Nigerian presidency said the unions had now agreed to further talks. In a separate development, the United Nations mission in the war-torn country has warned and said South Sudan was not yet prepared to hold elections next year. The polls, now scheduled for December 2024, will be the first in the world's newest country, which seceded from Sudan 12 years ago. Reports say a brutal civil war and stuttering peace process have long delayed them. Elsewhere, a group of medical students from Sudan have been welcomed to Rwanda to continue their studies after a civil war erupted in mid-April. Reports say their campus at the University of Medical Sciences and Technology was overrun and turned into a base by fighters in the capital Khartoum, where paramilitary forces and the army are involved in a power struggle. The 160 undergraduates who were 8 months away from completing their course have been offered space along with their lecturers at the University of Rwanda. The group, who are mainly made up of women, will also be practicing in local hospitals. Away from that, the lawyer of a Moroccan man accused of criticizing the country's king on social media has told journalists his client has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Said Bokoud was charged with undermining the monarchy for comments he posted on Facebook in 2020, criticizing Morocco's normalization of ties with Israel. He was living in Qatar at the time. The Moroccan constitution stipulates that foreign affairs are the responsibility of King Mohammed VI, and any comments that appear to question his authority are severely penalized. Bokoud's lawyer El Hassan Hassani described the sentence as harsh and incomprehensible and said his client would appeal. On a sad development, at least 20 people have died after a boat capsized in Ugandan waters on Lake Victoria. According to police, the overloaded boat was believed to have had 34 people on board when the accident happened on Wednesday. The police added that 9 people were rescued. Reports say the boat had also been carrying bags of charcoal, fresh food, silverfish, among others. They attributed the cause of the accident to overloading and bad weather. Meanwhile, rescue efforts by joint police, military, and looked on the shores of some of Africa's countries. Moving away from that, Somalia has suspended a sports official for nepotism after a novice sprinter was allowed to compete in an international sports competition. Nasra Abubakar Ali took almost twice as long as the winner to finish the 100-meter at the World University Games in China. An investigation by the Somali Ministry of Youth and Sport revealed she is not a sports person nor a runner. The chairwoman of the Somali Athletics Federation has been accused of abusing her power and defaming Somalia. Khadijo Aden Daher was stood down following a meeting between the country's sports ministry and its National Olympic Committee. Their preliminary investigation also found that a sports body known as the Somali University Sports Association does not exist. The ministry said it will pursue legal action against both the chairman of the Athletics Federation of Somalia and all that responsible for the falsification of the sports groups. It did not elaborate on what the connection between Daher and Ms. Ali is, but in a video of the event, the athlete is seen left out of shot and eventually completes the race with a jovial skip. Lastly, today on Spotlight Africa, a Tunisian singer who was hailed as the voice of the country's uprising in 2011 has had a forthcoming show cancelled after performing in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Last month, Emil Mathulithi performed in Bethlehem, Ramallah, and East Jerusalem to Palestinian audiences. Reports say following the tour, she was accused by pro-Palestinian campaigners of promoting normalization with Israel, and her performance at next week's Hamet International Festival in Tunisia has been cancelled. This is the much that we have for you today on Spotlight Africa, brought to you by Spectrum Television and Planet Radio. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. Do also to follow planetradio.ng. My name is Uyai Anek. Thanks for being a part of this. Do enjoy the rest of your evening.